Imagine this. Think back to a time when you were a child. You had these big dreams of what you would be and what you would do. How you wanted to be a movie star or a doctor or an astronaut. Whatever it was, you pursued it and convinced yourself that you would change the world. Nobody could stop you because you wanted this more than anything. And then, as time goes by, things start to change. The world you knew was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. And with that change comes new experiences, for better and for worse. Maybe you experience love for the first time, only to then discover the feeling of heartbreak. Maybe you get an exciting new job with decent pay, but then realize just how mind-numbing the 9-to-5 routine really is. And maybe you even start to pursue your dream, finally ready to make this passion a reality, only to realize that you might not be cut out for this. Maybe your story in this world wasn't the fairy tale you had hoped it would be. And as all these pressures build on top of you, you get sick of it. You don't want to deal with this cruel world anymore. You start to close yourself off. Friends message you to go out, but you lie and tell them that you're busy. Your family wants to see how you're doing, and you tell them you're okay, but you just need a break. You quit your job, you drop out of school, you don't talk to anyone. Always telling yourself that it'll all be okay. This'll all work itself out. It has to. This was just a slump that you dig yourself out of sooner than later, right? The next thing you know, you're living on your own, waking up every day to be greeted by the same four walls you've seen for who knows how long. Months? Years? What you do know is that everybody you've ever known has moved on. They've got successful careers, loving families, everything that you don't have. And then, all of a sudden, you start to realize your life has slipped through your fingers. You're trapped in a bottomless pit and don't know how to escape. This is a reality for many people across the world. A group of people known as Hikikomori. It's only recently that the concept of the Hikikomori has emerged. Originating from Japan, it describes those who decide to withdraw from society. A group of people who live imprisoned in their homes without knowing if they'll ever live an everyday life again. To put this into perspective, the term comes from Shikaiteki Hikikomori, or social withdrawal in English. When it first started popping up, many in Japan dismissed the issue. Many cases were thought of as teens playing hooky or ditching school. Nothing that wouldn't sort itself out after a while. As time went on though, more and more people decided to take their last steps in the outside world. They'd give up on the lives they dreamed of and seclude themselves. And the scariest part was that it could have been anybody. A coworker, a friend, or a family member. Nobody was safe from falling into the abyss and losing themselves. And this issue only continued to spiral, becoming a full-blown psychosocial epidemic. Christ, try saying that one 3 times fast. By the early 2000s, an estimated 1 million Japanese citizens called themselves Hikikomori. However, the crisis was met with silence. It was seen as a point of shame in Japanese society who felt more comfortable pretending nothing was happening. And those left suffering in silence also had to deal with the growing stigma against them, quickly going from seemingly helpless beings to societal leeches, often being unjustly demonized in the media. They were framed as dangerous schizophrenics who were always on the verge of a violent outburst. In truth, many of them were people who possibly went through tragic events that made them feel like they couldn't face the outside world anymore. And without any help, they only regressed, cutting themselves off from reality with nobody to help pull them out. The problem only continued to grow, allowing the withdrawal to expand beyond the boundaries of Japan, becoming what is now a worldwide issue. There's a story in a study titled Hikikomori Among Young Adults in Japan where, from the outside, one participant seemed to be doing pretty decently. A 25-year-old male who had good grades in university and landed a decent job afterward. However, he had one weakness that clawed away at him throughout his life: an inability to communicate well with others and the awkwardness that followed. He had a lonely childhood, spending a lot of time alone, taking walks, or playing catch with himself. Even in his adult life, others criticized him for that awkwardness, and he couldn't connect with others around him, eventually losing interest in trying. So he would leave his job, and once that first domino fell, everything else started falling apart. The study states, he began to be obsessed with locking doors, watching out for fire, etc. He was always worried about whether he could explain himself well to others. He tended to feel like he would be scolded no matter what he did or did not do. He had reached the point where it wasn't worth facing anything anymore. He probably started deluding himself that the only company he ever really needed was himself. This perspective was shared between all the participants in the study. The commonality between them is these episodes of defeat without struggle. This mindset of feeling like the effort for anything was meaningless because the moment they aspired for something, they had already lost. It's a gloomy account of one person's life, and the scary thing is that this story is shared by hundreds of thousands of people, each one carrying their own unique hardships day in and day out. Over time, there have been many portrayals of Hikikomori in media. One of my favorites is this crazy little anime music video from 2014 titled Me, Me, Me. Now, for those of you that were around during that time, you'll probably remember this for being, so wacky that I'm not entirely sure I can show you too much on YouTube without them slapping my tokus with a strike. Ugh. Oh! So, as much as I'd like to show you the titty cannons, I'm sorry, I can't show you the titty cannons. My apologies. What this music video shows off in such a short amount of time, though, is a really complex and compelling story about obsession, regret, and confinement. It's about a boy who has been consumed by his vices, in this case a hyper-sexualized anime girl, to the point where he's dropped everything else in his life in favor of the comfort of this strange otaku lifestyle. But as the music video goes on, we see how this boy left behind a relationship with a girl who cared a lot for him. And now he finds himself haunted by this vestige of her that literally eats away at him. This isn't the life he wants to be living. He wants to break free from this nightmare. He wants to confront his demons, now in the shape of a semi-nude anime girl, and get back to everyday life. But it's just too much for him to bear. He's unable to overcome it and instead awakes to the same cycle over and over and over again. The music video ends right where it began, playing again and showing us this never-ending repetition. I think it's a masterfully told piece that gives a feeling of what this is like for those caught in the loop. A sense of regret, a lingering desire, and the despair of containment. I bring this all up to give you an idea of what daily life for a hikikomori is like, and their common state of mind. To present this kind of mental prison these people are locked into, and how they rarely get the helping hand they need to escape themselves. To understand that the problem isn't that they don't want to go out, but that they don't know how. And there's one story I'd like to talk about today that just gets it. It's a story about the hikikomori struggle, but also so much more. It's a journey that challenges us to think about our lives and the things that come with it. Something that asks us what it means to be human, and the puzzle that is trying to understand ourselves and our place in the world. And it's all neatly wrapped together in an anime called Welcome to the NHK. Before I go on, I want to tell you all a little story. When I was about 11 years old, I used to scour the internet for whatever anime I could find on my parents' old Toshiba laptop, and it led me to finding things like Elfen Lied, Inuyasha, Death Note, Freezing. As a child, these shows set off far too many neurons in my head than should be allowed at once. However, something changed when I went to Funimation's old webpage and found an anime I watched in one sitting. Something I knew was great and was gonna stick with me for a long time. It immediately became my favorite anime, even if I didn't understand it back then. So I left it in the back of my mind as something I would revisit later. Suddenly, it's 2022. And by then, I had gone through a lot. I had been through love, I had been through heartbreak, I had been living my best life, I had hit rock bottom. And around that time, I started taking in a lot of media around the idea of self-reflection. Stories about these people who carried all this weight and regret with them, but recognized that they had to move forward, something I was struggling with at the time. I felt lost. I didn't really have much to look forward to. The future I dreamt of fell apart, and with it, so did my aspirations. So I hid myself from the world and let everything pass me by. Only for that anime to come back into my mind. There was always this nagging in the background telling me to watch it again. I wanted to revisit the show because of how much I enjoyed it, but another part of me said it wasn't the right time. I relented later, and I couldn't be more glad that I did. I already knew I loved this story, but this time meant so much more. So despite more recent recognition, I still say it doesn't have enough people talking about it. Considering how its subject matter is only becoming more and more relevant each day, I want to share what this is and why I love it so much. And yes, by the way, for those of you that have been counting, this video has been in production for the last 2 years. It's been tough to put my adoration for this series into words while giving it the justice it deserves. So I hope this pushes at least a few people to check it out for the first time and gives those who've already seen it a greater appreciation. So let's talk about it. Today, let's talk about the anime that changed my life. Keijo is a 2016 anime about a girl named Nozomi Kaminari. I really should have looked that up before saying that, dear Lord God. Known for being a remarkable athlete, she uses her talents to try and make money for her poor family. So she turns to the world of Keijo, a competitive women's sport where the girls involved stand atop a platform above water and attempt to push each other off using only their breasts and or buttocks. And her signature move is called the vacuum butt cannon. I don't think we're talking about the right show. Before Welcome to the NHK became an anime, it was a 192-page novel created by the mind of Tatsuhiko Takimoto. Before then, Takimoto was a relatively new author, a novelist who dreamt of making fantasy books inspired by the Dragonlance Chronicle series. Yeah, I know, right? However, he would take a very different approach with his first publication, Negative Happy Chainsaw Edge, which I only bring up because the villain's name in the series is Chainsaw Man, and there was no way I was gonna leave that out. Published in 2001, the light novel was pretty successful. It even got recognized at the prestigious Kadokawa Gakuen Awards. You know, the awards I brought up in the Gamera video, the same ones. It would also receive a manga and a more widely known film adaptation later in 2007. But this first novel would be nothing compared to what came next. Around this time, the Hikikomori epidemic was gaining attention in Japan. Heightened worries about it led to studies being conducted, news articles being published, and tons of media coverage. In Takimoto's own words, "I thought I'd jump on the tide of the times and earn a ton of money. I'll write a story about Hikikomori and become famous. I'll become a best-selling author with my Hikikomori story. I'll go to Hawaii using the royalties. I'll go to Waikiki." And with that, only a year later, Welcome to the NHK would be released. Not so surprisingly, the novel performed pretty well, generating enough attention to be adapted into a manga in 2003, and then the anime we know today in 2006. But what actually is Welcome to the NHK? The story of NHK is about a 22-year-old Hikikomori by the name of Tatsuhiro Satou, who believes there is a grand conspiracy against him by the titular organization, who keeps him at the bottom of the societal totem pole. And thanks to that, Satou never steps out of his apartment, instead keeping to himself so the conspiracy can't reach him. He's a self-described NEET whose days are spent wasting away in this lowly room, never engaging with the outside world and committing to self-isolation.
Ah, shit!
But things would all start to change for him as life would reunite him with some people of his past, as well as a new face committed to helping cure Satou of his Hikikomori ways. Overall, the show is a ton of fun with big comedy bits and heartfelt character moments, all while also knowing when to pull the curtain back and show these characters in their moments of weakness. While yes, this is a funny haha kind of show, it's also about living and finding your way when you feel lost. Despite its ridiculous comedy, what calls me the most about Welcome to the NHK is its attempt to talk about the human condition, using people who, at their core, are broken and trying to make themselves whole again. Each character here is unique in how they see and choose to live in the world, but they also share a common thread, having these tragic experiences that made it feel like the world had turned its back on them, distorting their realities to escape the pain that got them there in the first place. To me, these characters carry a level of depth that adds so much to the story Welcome to the NHK tells. People we can easily find ourselves relating to through the challenges they face. So that's right, baby! We're about to perform mediocre online armchair psychology, but also talk about what makes them who they are and why they're essential to the story. And there's no better place to start than to look at Satou's piece in this puzzle. Our main character is a struggler. A struggler is a person destined for ruin, who fights every day to overcome their literal demons. It all began one fateful day when he met a silver-haired man who would forever change his life. He was this dazzling spectacle of a person that kings bowed their heads to. So great is he that just standing beside him made it feel like you had a purpose. You begin to devote yourself to him. Everything you do is done for him, and you want to be a part of his great dream when he accomplishes it. He feels like a god amongst men who will stop at nothing to achieve what he desires. So what happens when that same man, this idol that took you under his wing and molded you into everything you are, snaps? What happens when that man's dream consumes everything you've ever known and loved? I don't think we're talking about the right person here. The character of Satou in Welcome to the NHK is such a complex one that speaks to me like not many other characters have. He is far removed from any sort of typical protag that you'd imagine. He's a weird, smelly, cynical pervert. By all definitions, he is a total freak.
I'm telling you, the dialogue you wrote for the heroine in this scene doesn't work at all.
You think so?
Not even close.
I don't know, it seems fine to me.
So that's because you're a fucking idiot.
Yet, you can't help but root for the guy. He is the self-described king of the Hikikomori, having locked himself away for several years after dropping out of college. Since then, he's done nothing with his life besides rot away in his room and talk to household appliances. Needless to say, stable is not the word I would use to describe him. As a matter of fact, it seems like he's been losing his sense of reality more and more with each passing day. So much to the point where he's talked into believing that his failures are all part of a conspiracy against him by the NHK. Yeah, like the broadcasting channel. Only he believes that they are part of a much more sinister plot. An agenda of showcasing so much anime to the populace that it turns them into otakus, and in turn, creating more NEETs. Their true identity is the Nihon Hikikomori Kyokai. This would also be put in his head by said talking appliances. So in his mind, he's done with the outside world, and anybody who engages with him must be out to get him. Any extending hand trying to help becomes another person trying to keep him down. And when you break it down like that, you start to realize just the kind of mindset a person like this has. One of the characteristics that many hikikomori have, in one way or another, is the need for escapism. The blatant attempt to avoid the world around them and outright reject it. Before making this video, I wanted to understand the psychological mindset of somebody who has withdrawn from society. So I decided to read what is likely the most significant novel on the subject matter, Hikikomori: Adolescence Without End. Yeah, that's right, I read a book, motherfucker. The author, Satou Tamaki, is a psychiatrist who has personally dealt with numerous different hikikomori cases in Japan, and has been outspoken on the importance of recognizing it as a real issue instead of ignoring its existence. And how he writes about this problem gives you an idea of how devastating this truly is. If you're interested in this subject at all, I'd recommend you check it out. It's a very insightful read with a lot of perspectives I never even took into consideration. Let me share some of his points. Firstly, Tamaki points out how people must recognize that being a hikikomori is not simply being lazy or a shut-in. What separates this condition from simple lethargy is the connection it has to trauma, how emotional scars can throw them off from the path to emotional maturity. To quote the man himself, one can look at social withdrawal as arising from the failure to mature as one travels along the path of character development. His theory is that the concept of becoming mature is a lot like building immunity towards sickness. The more you're exposed to illness, in this case trauma, the more resilience or maturity you build. So he equates becoming a hikikomori to the active regression of maturation. Because of this, people on the verge of independence and freedom find themselves again ensnared by their rooms and dependent on their families. In order for somebody to get a grasp of what's going on here, I felt it important to show you how it is that one reaches the Hikikomori mindset. To quote Tamaki again, it does not matter what the objective truth happens to be. They see their history as a series of failures. They may feel that they failed at their entrance exams. They might be disappointed at their own appearance. They might feel unable to make lovers or friends. They might feel as if they did not succeed at getting into the company that they wanted, and so on. This isn't a problem of knowing, it's a problem of feeling. It's a warped sense of mind that makes reality feel much more bleak and hopeless than it really is. But there's another critical aspect to the Hikikomori problem that separates it from something like depression, which is an active desire to live and get better. This is the core struggle that Satou fights against every day. He's constantly battling the part of him that wants to avoid the world and the part of him that wants to get out there, get a job, and make a life for himself. And it seems like every time he takes that step forward, a voice in his head commands him against it. After all, the world is a dangerous place. Everybody is looking at him, mocking him. He just doesn't know if he can do it anymore. He doesn't know if he can take the world pummeling him down again. The tragedy of Satou is that he had a way out of this life, but he let it fall apart. His story begins as a high schooler on his way to college and getting a job. On the outside, he seemed like your average pessimistic kid, slacking off during class and spending time with these friends that nobody ever saw him around. In actuality though, Satou was in a dark place. He was always alone and didn't feel like he belonged anywhere. That was until a gleaming light could finally take him out of his darkness. And that light's name was Hitomi Kashiwa. Seeing Satou in his isolation, Hitomi invites him to her literature club. This became a place where they'd spend time after school and form a bond with each other. Although, as time went on, this seemingly ordinary friendship turned into something else. They had been forsaken by the world, having been beaten down by it time and time again. Every moment of happiness shattering before an unforgiving reality. Everything they looked forward to withered away into a broken dream. And the only release they could find from their misery was to stop dreaming. Maybe that way they could stop feeling the pain that haunted their existence. But their worlds only continued to break. And with that, they began to spiral. In response, they developed something of a toxic, codependent relationship with one another. A relationship that allowed them to satisfy the worst part of themselves and remove responsibility from their lives. Hitomi had just gone through a breakup. She was uninterested in whatever the future held for her and was worried about her place in the world. She carried a fear that she didn't matter and that she never would. So why bother trying in the first place? Those feelings bottled up, and in their place arose ideas that it wasn't her running away from the world, it was the world giving up on her. Because everything that was going wrong wasn't her and Satou's fault. They were among the few who had found themselves in a conspiracy, a plot to make their lives miserable at all costs. Hitomi and Satou's connection only continues to grow, becoming more intimate with each passing day. They'd share the best and worst of times, learning more about each other and talking about the future. Even if they were just playing cards, that time together felt special. And because somebody was willing to step in and help him, Satou wants to be the one who takes away all her pain and gives her the happiness she deserves. Only, at each chance he gets, he fumbles it. At the moments when she needed him most, it seemed like he just couldn't muster up the courage to comfort her. So, instead of furthering their relationship, he misses his chance. Satou likely felt he couldn't provide what she needed, and didn't want to risk bringing her into a life where she'd grow more miserable. Whatever the reason was, I think this was Satou's first real taste of trauma. He was finally able to connect with somebody like he never had before, yet it manifested into nothing and slowly withered away. So he continued on with his life, now recognizing that all these things he put effort into might not give him anything back. He started to feel like all the time he put into everything was a waste. Why bother giving your time to a world that won't give back? Why not just live for yourself? With all these thoughts clouding his head, he began to feel the cold glare of people judging him as he walked down the street. He couldn't stand the judgment he felt by those around him. So he locks himself away at Mita House, waking up every day wondering how everything went so wrong, wondering if he'll ever be able to escape the regret. From there on, the series becomes a test for Satou. Fate puts him into scenarios where he must challenge himself to push away that regret. And how ironic is it that one of those challenges was a surprise reunion with Hitomi over 4 years later. And I think this reunion is so upsetting because it's not just Satou's life that has changed. Hitomi carries that same regret that they didn't get together. And since then, everything in life has been working against her. She felt the pressures of her life building up and was losing the battle against them, self-destructing and committing to an unhealthy lifestyle. Seeing this, Satou begins to wake up. He realizes that something needs to change. So he dedicates himself to escaping the 4 walls of his apartment, choosing to walk down these paths with different people and being brought into their worlds. And even though that sometimes means that he would work on a filthy gal game or spend weeks of his life playing Ultimate Fantasy Online and falling in love with a disgusting cat girl, these experiences help him grow. And one of the most important experiences in his journey is with Yamazaki. But before we get to that, hey moron, do you like lard? Then you should check out, I haven't thought of the rebrand just yet, the link will be here. There you can get early previews, exclusive content, exclusive polls, early releases, and 1 entry to the annual challenge pissing contest. So come on by to, link here, and throw money my way because, I don't know, I put a lot of effort into this video. I'm just asking at this point. Give me money. I want you to think for a moment. Just imagine yourself as this absolutely pathetic loser who everybody looks at as a mouth-breathing peon. All right, that wasn't too hard. You meander every day wishing for a purpose. You want to be the ruler of your own destiny. You want to be the hero of your own story. But this world gives you nothing. Here, you awake every day to the same meaningless life with no way of escape. But what if you could? What if you found yourself in another reality vastly different from your own? What if this reality was one where your story finally got to play out and you were the champion of it? What if all your hopes and dreams, likely involving a harem, manifested before your very eyes and it was all yours? This is the story of one it's the wrong character again! Karo Yamazaki. Oh man, where do I even start with this nematode? Their friendship is easily one of my favorite dynamics in all of anime.
Be gone, dirty whores!
Be gone, dirty whores!
They first met when Yamazaki was a middle schooler being beaten up by his classmates. Satou decided then that he could easily take on some middle schoolers and look like a hero in front of Hitomi. And even though this went much the same way as Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby, Yamazaki was grateful that somebody would stand up for him. From that point, he would look up to Satou, trying to be a part of his life and even wanting to join the literature club after Hitomi's graduation. 4 years later, they would meet again. Only now, the dynamic was a little more twisted. Satou is now the helpless one, and Yamazaki is the one guiding him. And even if they're coming together to make a game of, questionable integrity, it's still a step, you know? However, things are quite a bit different for Yamazaki, too. He's got his own set of problems and traumas which have changed him. Aside from a nasty case of the heebie-weebies and his deeply problematic adoration for moe bishoujo anime girls. Listen, I promise this goes somewhere. He also just can't seem to stand living in the real world. As we learn more about Yamazaki, the story starts to paint a picture of somebody who doesn't believe in the good of the world anymore. Somebody who turns away from it and drowns himself in a fantasy, even though, deep down, he wants the world to accept him. It all began when he was a kid with a crush on a girl who helped him in elementary school with some bullies. Whether it be appreciation or respect for somebody willing to step in, he found feelings for her and asked her out to a fireworks festival, only to be denied because she was too busy. So Yamazaki decides to go alone, only to see her with another boy. That one bit of heartbreak led to him seeing the world in a different light. He started to believe that the world was playing this cruel game with his feelings, and he may never be happy. So when he catches feelings for Nanako, a girl at his college, all he sees is another heartbreak waiting to happen. Instead, he retreats into a fantasy filled with these characters that can't say no to him. A place where he's in control of his own destiny. A reality where nobody could ever hurt him again. Besides, all he ever needed was Pururin, a magical anime girl who has the power to transform into
pudding.
And while it might not have been that extreme, I think I get it. When I was a kid, I watched this one episode of Batman Beyond that had this new villain named Ink, who just completely entranced me. She must have been my first animated crush or something, because I just remember watching this VHS over and over and over again. And I know you think I'm lying. I know it. But guess what? Guess what? I have it. It's right here. It's in my hands. It's on the empty side. It literally is on the empty side. I'm getting off topic, aren't I? The point is, Yamazaki wasn't going anywhere. It was only until fate reunited him and Satou that things began to change. The synergy these two have with one another is fantastic.
What the hell is this?
What do you mean? That's the heroine of our game, Sato. She's a sickly alien-made robot ghost childhood friend that's the reincarnation of a fox with a split personality.
Incidentally, one of the only reasons Satou started to leave his room in the first place was a distressing sound of anime hell blasting through his wall for a month. By the way, I sincerely apologize to everyone who will have this theme stuck in their heads for the next week.
Turn that shit off!
The two decide to tackle game creation together, vowing to make the best gal game the world has ever seen. And it's just funny to me because Yamazaki is elated to see Satou at first. But then, as Satou gets busy dilly-dallying, playing hundreds of hours worth of MMOs and downloading around 17 petabytes of, shall we say, research materials.
Did you just download 120 gigs of porn?
No! Well, maybe. Okay, yes!
Yamazaki now sees this guy he had looked up to before as some low-down perverted chump who keeps stealing food from his apartment. It leads to some great moments between the two. But even with that frustration, you can't help but notice that they're helping each other with their problems too. Through their journey, Yamazaki learns to face the real world and challenge his destiny. And it's perhaps his trials with Nanako that you can really see that change. In the real world, Yamazaki's peers look at him as a creep. Rumors of his fascination for these young anime girls and H-games run amok throughout his college. But that doesn't stop a girl named Nanako from spending time with him after class. It's a seemingly innocent gesture. However, Yamazaki's warped reality sees their relationship as something different than it really is. He gleefully tells Misaki about his girlfriend at school, smiling from ear to ear at just the thought of her. She means a lot to him, but Satou finds that the same care isn't reciprocated. All that talk Yamazaki had about his girlfriend was just his distortion bleeding into the real world. Maybe worst of it all, he seemed to know it. He chose to see it this way because it was easier than telling himself there was nothing between them. And this only hurts Yamazaki more because the opposite begins to happen. He models the heroine of his game to be just like Nanako, blurring the line between fiction and reality so much for him that neither feels stable anymore. Especially as Nanako actively wants to spend more time with him. Yamazaki finds himself bound by these two worlds, finding a warm embrace and a cold loneliness in both. He also knows that he has no control over his life. Ever since he was a kid, his parents had carved out a future for him where every decision was thought out ahead of time without Yamazaki's feelings in mind. And the thought of that, it sickened him. So he decided to move to Tokyo. He wanted to make a name for himself and take destiny back into his own hands, becoming a world-famous game maker. He would create pieces that would captivate everybody. He would be on top of the world. But maybe this too was just another one of his delusions. Because even though Yamazaki was finally chasing his dream, it still felt like reality wouldn't let him have his victories. Later, Yamazaki would receive a call from his family, telling him to come back home and take over their farm. Time was running short, the Winter Games Festival was coming up, and they had to create a successful game. If not, everything Yamazaki had worked so hard for would go up in smoke because if he couldn't make this dream come true by then, that was the end of it. But before it's all said and done, Yamazaki starts saying goodbye to the life he had built in Tokyo. He starts burning his college books, gifts items from his room to Satou, and even decides to make one last call to Nanako. This saga Yamazaki has had with Nanako has been complicated, to say the least. They always seem to be in a constant state of will they, won't they, as Nanako only appears to appreciate Yamazaki more and more with time. But on one of Yamazaki's final days, he and Satou decide to get drunk together. Yamazaki dared himself to call Nanako so she could come to his apartment and see the room of a super otaku, making sure that she would find nothing but disgust for him and drop any feelings she may have had. He would reveal all he was just to push her away. But when she actually gets there, something different happens. Sure, she's none too pleased about being modeled into a game where she's being attacked by tentacles. Instead of rejecting it though, she embraces it. She tells him that his boldness to pursue his dreams made her admire him and accept him for who he is. This really surprises Yamazaki. Nobody had ever been accepting of the world he had created for himself. Yet, here she was, welcoming it with open arms. And in that one tender moment, he mocks her for it. He tells her she must be crazy for even considering it, pushing her away. Having watched Yamazaki just clam jam himself, Satou asks if this is really what he wants, if this is really okay. Yamazaki responded by saying it was funny and dramatic. What else could he have possibly asked for? This moment really says a lot about his character because Yamazaki told Satou before that their lives weren't meant to be big. They weren't destined for these huge dramatic moments like other people. It leads me to question how much Yamazaki wanted to break free from that, to escape the normalcy he was destined for. How much he wanted to live in a way bigger than his family ever thought possible. All he wanted was to control his life and how he lived it. And though it was a bitter pill to swallow, he would start by controlling the end of what he built. And that brings us to the Winter Games Fest. Satou and Yamazaki had finally finished their game and debuted it at the festival. However, the game was met with silence. With only 5 copies purchased, they returned home with a box full of unsold games and a broken dream. But Yamazaki assures Satou that it's okay. The sales aren't what mattered here. What was important was that Yamazaki could say that he did it, that he designed a game and left his mark on Tokyo. He wanted to say that a piece of his reality had made its way into the world, whether they accepted it or not. This then takes us to Yamazaki's final day in Tokyo and, oh god, not another painful snowball fight. What was initially meant to be Satou and Yamazaki enjoying themselves in the snow turns into a moment where reality comes crashing down on Yamazaki. There is no escape anymore. That dream he pursued is over. Like he says, real life just doesn't get to play out like TV dramas. They have structure, a plot, emotional climaxes, and resolutions. But in the real world, things aren't so simple. Instead, you have to deal with the stress of everyday life, waking up without knowing if you'll get the resolution you strive for. It's just a bunch of anxieties that never get resolved. It's very disheartening to see how, in that moment, that facade he puts on breaks. And what you're left with is somebody who just saw all his hopes and dreams crumble before him. Whether he wanted to or not, he now had to face reality. And it hurt because, despite his many creepy tendencies, you saw the good in him. No matter what people thought about him, they couldn't deny his burning passion. It kills me when he pours out his heart and soul to the world just to be met with disappointment. He was just starting to belong here and finally putting the pieces of his puzzle back together. But reality waits for no one. Reality doesn't care about your dreams. And he sees that harsh truth as he says goodbye to Satou for one last time. It's a bittersweet arc because later on we see him succeeding. He's living a good life with what he's been given. At the same time, it doesn't hurt any less when Satou loses a person he wasn't ready to say goodbye to. After all their work, he worried it might feel like going back to square one. But there's one thing they still have together that keeps them going: the memories they've made. If there's any silver lining here, it's that they were able to work on themselves together. They helped each other create these special moments they'll hold for a lifetime, no matter the outcome. Like before, there was an appreciation just for trying. Because somebody was willing to come out and help Yamazaki, he started opening up again. Maybe that was all he needed to begin to believe in the world again. He could finally escape his reality and leave the other side as a better person. At the same time, this series is not afraid to tell you that not everything will go the way you want it to. And this melancholic feeling isn't just limited to Yamazaki. Welcome to a world of anxiety and suspicion, a place where nothing really quite seems right, and bizarre happenings become more frequent every day. But the longer things go on, the more you realize there's a method to this madness. You come to realize people that are being attacked seemingly at random were actually targeted. But even still, you can't break down the reason why. What you do know is that this force intruding itself into your world is beyond anything you had faced before. Panic begins to settle in as this unreachable foe continues to inflict its justice onto the people around you. An overwhelming paranoia begins to arise out of it, and you're left feeling hopeless over its presence. There's nothing you can do about it, nothing you can do to it. Your entire fate was being swallowed away by this entity, and you could only watch as it devoured you, ripping away at your very essence. And then it says, make a 1984 joke here, so Big Brother!
Silent free these people!
I touched on Hitomi before, but there's a lot more to say about her. She's most likely the reason why Satou became a Hikikomori in the first place, feeling like one of few people to stumble upon a real-life conspiracy that's responsible for her suffering. Unsurprisingly though, this is nothing more than a cover for the reality she chooses to believe against. It's a delirium against the world built by her denial of it. All the while, she walks through it feeling lost and alone, adrift without somebody there who can help her make sense of her life. So she places all the blame on forces out of her control. If she's suffering, it couldn't possibly be her fault. There must be something else going on. But deep down, she's afraid. She's worried there isn't a place for somebody like her in this world. Feeling singled out at work, only to come home to a partner she thinks doesn't understand her. That's when she decides to reconnect with the person that life made sense with, Satou. Despite both enabling each other's vices, Hitomi seemingly finds a way out of this conspiracy. And it takes us to one of the most disturbing moments in NHK. The offline meeting arc in the middle of the series tackles a group gathering to meet their untimely demise. These are people who feel that their lives are no longer worth living, and decide the world would be better without them. Among them are Hitomi and an unaware Satou, only tagging along because he thinks he can finally save her. And maybe just wants to get laid.
Boobies.
Ass.
Part of the reason this arc is so bleak is because of how at peace these people seem, like nothing could change their minds. Although, this is where Satou possibly makes his best stride. The group is spending their final hours on the beach, silent and isolated from each other. Satou, still unaware of what's actually going on, tries to engage with each one, only to be rejected.
What a douchebag.
After his failed attempts, Satou sees a large trunk submerged in the sand. Seeing an opportunity to lighten the mood, he tries to lift it out himself to use for a campfire. Seeing him struggle, the others all join in one by one, save Hitomi, and all find a subtle joy in this small act of teamwork. This brings everyone together for a bonfire where these people could just take in this warmth that they brought each other. But it's still not enough. Late in the night, the group still pushes on with their plans. Satou, now having realized what's going on, finds himself linking with the others as they walk to the edge of a seaside cliff. preparing for the end. As the group stares death in the face, they can't do it. One by one, they all break down, each giving reasons for staying alive. They realize this isn't what they wanted. The release from the momentary pain wasn't a solution to their issues. It was running away. Even though there might be hardships to endure, life is much more than just those moments. It was a realization that for every bad moment, there's one of laughter and love, unity and happiness. They realized those hardships were simply opportunities to make something better. All of them except for Hitomi. She still believes that this is the only way out, that this is the only way to end the conspiracy. That is until her partner Jogasaki arrives via speedboat with Yamazaki and Misaki in tow. The trio had been chasing the group all day, pulling up just in time. Jogasaki reassures Hitomi of his love for her and proposes, which stops her from jumping. Satou, though, is not too amused that he nearly jumped off a cliff for a girl already in a relationship. Realizing he was moments away from dying for no reason, he decides, what the hey, and goes through with it anyway out of sheer embarrassment. He only decided against it after Yamazaki talks him out of it, but because this is welcome to the NHK, Satou slips and falls anyway, thankfully being caught by the rest of the group. If I can reiterate, this is one crazy show. After some time at a spa, everybody leaves with a renowned passion for life. Satou finds himself alone again, and doesn't see Hitomi until they run across each other on New Year's Eve some months later. She's in a much better place. Her wedding is coming up and she finally feels happy. But feeling this happy feels like a bad omen.
Yeah, but I mean, you are happy, right?
I'm happy, but that's why I'm so uneasy.
And with that uneasiness, she falls back onto Satou for support. Maybe he was the only one who could relate to her wanting to run away from the world. I think many of us are familiar with things feeling a little too good. Having that worry in the back of your mind because you're happy must mean something terrible is right around the corner. It feels like the world is waiting to pull out the rug from under you, like you're not allowed to be happy. And so we start to self-sabotage. We avoid the people we want to talk to, we avoid the places we want to go, and all because you know it's just another way to get hurt. And this is exactly what Hitomi does. In a moment of weakness seeking reprieve from her curse, she asks Satou to have an affair with her. In an instant, she could ruin everything she has worked for because she didn't believe she was destined for happiness. But Satou sees that she's close to that happiness and turns her down, not wanting her to ruin everything for his sake. Hitomi, sadly, understands and says goodbye. But her mood shifts when she happily mentions she's pregnant. Satou bittersweetly congratulates her, and with that, she once again disappears, settling into her newly found life, getting a chance to experience the happiness she longs for. Imagine you live in a cruel, barbaric world where monsters are real and seek to snuff out the lives of those you've come to know and love. And the only thing protecting you from them are the walls between you. However, within that barrier, you find that the evils within might just be even more frightening. The people inside, having grown cold and restless, destroy any semblance of peace you once had, all for their selfish gain. And just as they plan to take you out too, something happens. A savior appears to help you and take you out of the hell you've been placed in. In your bleakest, darkest moment, your miracle happens. The gratitude you feel for this person is beyond any words you can think of. All you know is that this person has become important to you. You want to dedicate yourself to them and repay the favor. You want to be worthy of them, no matter the cost. I hope it makes sense why I made this joke 4 times in a row, because otherwise this is gonna come off as very annoying. The whole reason I wanted to make this video was because of a character that fuels the entire story of Welcome to the NHK. That character is Misaki Nakahara. At first, you get the idea that Misaki is something of a savior, someone looking to help this poor Hikikomori break free from the prison of his home and find his way back into society. She always possessed an eagerness to do it, like it was all coming from the goodness of her own heart. Misaki would meet with Satou as much as she could, trying to break down why he was stuck at this point in his life and make him feel like he was progressing towards a better tomorrow. And the funny thing was, it was actually working. Because of her actions, Satou slowly started making his way back into society, facing things that matured him and thinking for himself instead of listening to the voices in his head. She was like an angel sent down from heaven to save this lowly man at his worst. But in reality, this couldn't be further from the truth. Something that's always disturbed me about mental health is how you never really know who's struggling. What's worse is that it's often those who wear the biggest smiles on their face that are the ones hurting the most. This is Misaki in a nutshell. On the outside, she has this calm, composed exterior, one that says she has her life together. But on the inside, it's all a front to hide a broken person from a lifetime of hardships. She feels helpless, a hollow shell looking for purpose in her life. The truth is, Misaki doesn't help Satou to fix him. She helps Satou because she hopes that it will fix her. There's a clever little thing the anime does that breaks down Misaki's character perfectly. Misaki and Satou meet at a park for counseling sessions almost every night. Before one of these sessions, Misaki connects with a stray cat, giving it food. Satou tells her the cat doesn't care about her. It only likes her because she feeds it, and that it'll leave without a second thought when something better comes around. We see the first little chip in her armor when she tells Satou that she doesn't mind it. It's okay so long as they both get something out of it. It's this one moment that seems innocent enough at first, but further develops throughout the narrative. The next indication was a brief scene in the offline meeting arc. At this point, Misaki saw Satou leave with Hitomi and hadn't seen him since, so she recruits Yamazaki to help her find him. Yamazaki, ever the cynic, speaks his mind to Misaki, saying her guidance could be why Satou went missing. After all, Yamazaki had seen Satou go through so many conflicts with her. He tells her that this dependency she's instilling on Satou feels like she's feeding a stray dog, and that she's bound him to her through the counseling sessions. Misaki implores Yamazaki that her only intention is to help, but he's suspicious of her true intentions. In response, all Misaki can say is that she needs Satou. But at this point in the story, we still don't know why. With Yamazaki leaving Tokyo, he entrusts Misaki to look after Satou. She takes this as an incredible responsibility, making herself believe that she is the only person Satou has left. So it breaks Misaki when she sees him reunite with Hitomi on New Year's, thinking she wasn't needed anymore. Something better had finally come along. She felt worthless, even the lowest of the low didn't need her. And then Misaki returns to the park and finds the stray cat has died. All she wanted was to be valuable to somebody, but she couldn't deny her feelings anymore. She was worse than nothing. She felt like a curse to the world, with no place for her in it. There's a moment in Satou's online game addiction arc, yes, that's exactly what it sounds like, where he's so invested in the game that he focuses on nothing else. He doesn't shower, he doesn't eat, and he won't even meet with Misaki. Realizing that she's rapidly losing a hold on him, she degrades herself into dressing like a cat girl to try and grab his attention.
Get the hell out of here!
What's with all the noise out here?
It's played off for comedy, but it's also a peek behind the curtain. This scene shows that Misaki will do anything to be important to Satou. Nothing is too shameful as long as it means reaching that goal. The manga for NHK especially takes this concept to the extreme. Even back in the offline meeting arc, Misaki tells Satou she needs him to live because he is garbage, someone lower than her. Simply put, she needs him to need her. But now, with Satou finding his way in the world, he was slipping away from her. These quick moments of weakness for her began to grow into a quiet anguish, a despair that would tear her apart. Reaching a breaking point, we see what manifests in the episode, Welcome to Misaki. At this point in the story, Misaki starts questioning why she has to suffer so much. Why can't she have this one little thing? Why must she prove her worth? Why can't she just have one miracle? There could only be one answer. A force beyond her reach is working against her, taking away any shred of happiness. For Misaki, it wasn't society. It wasn't reality. It wasn't even a conspiracy. The one making her suffer this entire time must have been none other than God. In her mind, if God created everything, then it's he who brought her that pain in the first place. And any God who brought that into the world must be evil. The only problem is that she couldn't tackle this struggle like Yamazaki, Hitomi, and the others. There was no way she'd be able to face this evil God, let alone find some way to take him out. She was stuck, fighting an unwinnable battle. She was tired of putting up with it. She wanted to give up. One characteristic of Misaki is her constant reliance on contracts. They are seemingly used to hold Satou to his word, but are more a means to forcibly bind him to her. So, after he graduates from their counseling sessions, Misaki told him she would be returning to her hometown, the same place where her mom removed herself from the world when Misaki was a child. There's something about how she describes the event that's just so haunting. She never names the town, only describing it as a distant place. The picture that phrase paints is an all too obvious conclusion. She makes one final desperate plea to Satou. With hope in her eyes, she hands him one last contract, one that says that they'll care for each other or be subjected to a fine of 10 million yen. Satou cares for her and also wants this, but something doesn't feel right. The whole thing just feels hollow. Trying to force a lifelong commitment by the bounds of a paper contract. With a heavy heart, Satou rejects her. Misaki pleads with him, saying he should be head over heels for her because she's the only one he has left. And without it, she'd be useless. Satou says she'll be fine, but his words fall on deaf ears. All Misaki can say is she's lonely and won't have anybody to fall back on if he's not a part of her life. Satou still refuses, telling himself that he wants to be with Misaki but doesn't think he can save her. The voices of Yamazaki and Hitomi, among others, tell him that it's time to admit that he is nothing more than a failure. A coward who ran away from everything when things got a little too tough. Satou finds himself completely alone. Without Misaki to bring him food, Satou holds himself back up in his apartment, hoping that a huge supply of dairy products from Yamazaki will get him by. But after that falls through and his parents cut his allowance, Satou plunges deeper into desperation. With no avenue of hope left, Satou crawls back into the real world and secures himself a job. But in that time, the house that watched over him grew something sinister inside. Something that boiled over and led to Misaki making a terrible decision. Seeing an ambulance at the house, Satou arrives just in time to see Misaki being taken away. He later returns and meets with Misaki's uncle.
Wait, that freak.
Who takes him to the hospital where Misaki is being held. During the drive, her uncle tells Satou her story. Up until that point, we really didn't know all that much about Misaki. But as her uncle recounts the story, her background turns out to be much more tragic than we could have imagined. Misaki's father died when she was very young, and that led to her mother remarrying. The person she married was violent and abusive towards the two, getting to a place where Misaki's mother couldn't take the pain anymore. So she decided to go to that distant place away from her family, leaving Misaki at the mercy of a bitter stepfather. Because of this trauma, she had a hard time dealing with people. She didn't have any friends, dropped out of school, and felt guilty about using other people's time. So she sought out somebody who needed her. She just wanted to live, be happy, be wanted, to get past all her trauma and move on with her life, and not let all that suffering be justified. She needed a miracle. And one fateful day looked down and saw somebody even more useless than her. With Satou, she felt like she had found that miracle. Her uncle even telling Satou how excited she got whenever she spoke of him. Finally arriving at the hospital, Misaki is nowhere to be found. The only thing left behind is a book with an ominous note inside. Realizing what's happening, Satou knows he can't run away this time. Misaki had tried so hard to save him. It was finally time for him to return the favor. It was finally time that Satou faced off against his regret. Satou finds Misaki on the same edge where her mother ended her life. What destroys me about this scene is how empty Misaki's eyes look. There's a conviction in all her words, a feeling that she's told herself that this is the only way out. Satou tries to talk her out of it, but his words don't reach her. Nothing he could say could change her mind. She believed she was a burden on everybody's life, making those around her unhappy, but didn't want to admit it to herself. And now, the only way to remove that burden was for her to be gone. Sitting on a fence by the edge of the cliff, she falls back, ready to meet her end. That is, until her miracle happens. Satou grabs her at the last moment, pulling her back up and holding her for a long time. The look on Misaki's face is one of deep remorse and regret. If Satou was willing to save her, then her loss would bring him pain. And if her loss brought him pain, that must have meant he needed her. Still embracing her, Satou tells Misaki that it's not her fault, that she didn't deserve all this pain. The world is unfair for putting her through everything she's been through. That's right. It's not her fault. It's not her fault at all. It was the NHK's. Substitute it for whatever you like, but it was their fault that they had to deal with these hardships. It was their fault they had to suffer. And now this was an opportunity to stop them. This was the moment he could take down this Goliath and save the world. Screaming out, Satou runs towards the Gargantua with his revolution bomb, leaping over the edge, ready to die a f***ing dramatic death, only to then crash back into reality by way of a newly constructed fence. Welcome to the NHK is one wild show.
What the fuck is this shit?
After being helped up by Misaki, they venture into her old abandoned house to avoid the winter storm, which might be my favorite scene in the entire series. It feels like this is the first time we get to see them talk to each other. Not as part of a contract or lesson or anything, but just as people. Misaki even says she'll listen to whatever stories Satou wants to tell, no matter how boring. And the sincerity of this scene, just seeing these two connect, feels so real. After everything these two had been through, they can simply share this moment and be at peace. Time passes by and it's springtime. Satou receives word from Hitomi and Yamazaki. Both had found peace and are living happily. Having conquered his fears, Satou is also living happily, helping Misaki get back on track. That hollow feeling that was once there had been lifted and replaced with a genuine warmth and optimism for the future ahead. But to cement that future, Misaki presents one last contract to Satou. The evil god that haunted Misaki's life was gone, but there was no telling when he could return. The only thing to combat this threat was another contract. One that says that if one of them should die, so will the other. And with a smile, Satou signs. If I can break away from narrating for a minute, Welcome to the NHK has been one of the most challenging things I've ever had to talk about. Not just because there's so much nuance to the story and its characters, but because it forced me to take a step back and kind of look at myself. I don't typically like watching videos or reviews on media I plan to cover, but this is one of the few times I decided to break that rule. Because I knew there were people who found this show and formed a strong connection to it like me. And because they had that connection, they felt inspired to face the world because now they knew there were other people alongside them struggling too. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was one of those people. Something else I feel this anime presents so well is that there is a problem. There are so many people who are afraid to be themselves and do what they believe in because they don't feel like they're good enough. And in some way, I think we can all relate to that kind of story. To bookend this story, I mentioned at the beginning of this video how Welcome to the NHK was born from a want to capitalize on the growing interest in Hikikomori. You know, to travel to Waikiki and all that. But the irony is that this story is written by a Hikikomori himself. Takimoto pulled from his very own life experiences to create a story that felt real. And because of that, he has gone on to say that this was a challenging piece to make, putting this character on full display who mirrored the same struggles that Takimoto faced regularly. If there's one thing this story wouldn't work without, it's vulnerability. Because there is nothing more powerful a person can do than bear their weaknesses and confront their problems anyway. There's an honest desire to want to get better, painted by a man seeking that same betterment. It breathes life into everything here and makes it easy to put yourself into any of these characters' shoes. And for that, I have to applaud Tatsuhiko Takimoto because that is some next level bravery. And because he was able to be so vulnerable and so authentic, he's touched the hearts of many. He has since gone on to say that his battle with withdrawal is something he still tackles. He is still trying to seek his own personal freedom, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will find it. He ignited a spark, allowing people to recognize pain they couldn't see before. And that is beautiful. It was only recently that he started making a rebuild of Welcome to the NHK that features the same characters in a modern setting, showing that a story like this is so universal that it's timeless. So I'd really like to take this time to say that if his work has moved you in a way like it has me, please consider supporting him in his other ventures. You can purchase copies of Rebuild of NHK, check out his YouTube channel, and see his SoundCloud profile, where he makes excellent music. Check it out. At its core, Welcome to the NHK is a show all about the human element. The struggle to find the motivation to get out of bed every day. The want to find meaningful relationships in a cruel world. The ability to look at ourselves and say, I need help. The moments when you're down only for your buddy to see that and say, hey, let's get drunk. All of this encompassed in a funny show about a guy who gets sucked into a pyramid scheme by his old class president. Oh shit, I didn't even get a chance to talk about that part.
This is one sucker you're not gonna suck! Ah!
Everybody here has a goal, a missing piece to their puzzle, something they strive for that will cure them of their ways. But life rarely plays out how you want it to. It's one of those meaningful reminders that everybody has their own personal baggage, trauma that they've bottled away so they can focus on their happiness, only for that trauma to later rear its head. But this show is also a reminder of those helping hands that stretch out to you and say, hey, you're kind of fucked up. Let me help you with that. We're all imperfect people in an imperfect world, just looking to do better. This is one of the shows that helped me understand that we never have to do that alone. Sure, we might be on our own journeys to better ourselves, but those helping hands are the most crucial step to reaching our end goal. Before, I'd always been very particular about leading my life and controlling my future with my own two hands, but this taught me a lesson that I don't have to do that alone. That it's okay to rely on others, that it's okay to have people build your dream with you, and I'm thankful to have those people in my life. So I'd like to thank those people. If you're watching this video or had any part in it, I want you to know that you've impacted my life more than you could ever know. I'd also like to thank Tatsuhiko Takimoto for presenting me with a story not only about weakness, but about growth. For building a story that helped mold me a decade ago and continues to affect how I see the world today. Fate never plays out how we expect it to, but if we continue to hold each other up, we'll be alright. It's never too late to turn things around and strive for a better future. And I mean, hey, what have you got to lose? After all, it's just one big conspiracy. Hello? Is this thing working? Hello? I think it's working. Hey, hello, it's me again. I think I just do like a general update every time I have like a big August upload, so we're gonna do that now apparently. I just finished editing the video like a few minutes ago and I figured, you know what? Let's go ahead and just talk about it, okay? Because rebrand happened. That's a thing that's going on. We are no longer Cynical Justin. We are now, I think, Justin SVA. Hopefully, maybe. I think I might change it. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how long that holds for, but we'll find out, I guess. We'll see on that one. Anyway, I think the main reason obviously, I always start with one of these, but thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Every time I make a video like this, it's always one of those things where I have no idea how the video is going to do. And I really want to know what you guys think of this approach to it, because I think it retains a lot of the stuff I was doing before while kind of elevating it. So hopefully it feels like that. I hope it does. I hope it feels a little bit more personal. I hope it feels a little bit more, interesting. We'll see. I'm gonna keep on trying to continue that kind of style from here on out. I made an update a little bit ago saying that like some of the smaller stuff will be pushed back to the second channel at a Cynical Artist. So if you're interested in seeing this stuff like the other stuff I made that maybe, 10, 20 minute long video, that kind of idea, check out the other channel. That's cool. Epic. Awesome. Bazinga. Also, if you enjoyed the video, there was supposed to be a portion of this that was supposed to have like some abridged bits in between the video that I was gonna hope I could like split things up a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting, and you know, that was the hope, but then copyright happened, so that didn't work out very well. So, you know, I decided to take them all up and put them on the second channel where they can just be its own little thing and copyright won't affect me there because, you know, generally I like to have these videos not be taken down, so we can live with that. If that one gets taken down, we can kind of modify some things, but not the whole video. So if you're interested in that, I think they came out pretty well. I think they're pretty great. I'll leave little clips here, but check it out. I think it's honestly pretty fun.
I always had a feeling you'd end up like this, Satou. Living the way you do. I mean, wow, that must suck!
I really wish I didn't come here. Oh, also, I keep on forgetting to announce more things. I had a discussion with my friend Reeve on the series that is available for both channel members and patrons. I think it's a very fun discussion as well. We just talk about the series, how we think about it, what the characters mean to us, that whole idea. And I think it leads into a lot of things I could have talked about into the video, but felt more right in that discussion. So I left it as a perk for those people. Check it out. Again, that's epic. That's cool. I really don't have words for this right now. But to get to the actual update portion of it, what I want to talk about here is to let you know what you can expect to see next. And right now, as of after this recording is done, I'm going to be working on a Dragon Ball Super video. Just because I want to talk about it before Daima comes out. I figured, you know, I made that Dragon Ball GT video last year. I thought it'd be a good time to work on a Super video now, since I've been wanting to talk about it since it ended in 2018, I think. So now's the time. Feels as good of a time as any. We're going to talk about it. I hope you enjoy that because I think it's going to be probably my longest video to date. There's a very good chance it could be upwards of 2 hours. I'm not looking forward to editing that, but all things considered, we're hoping for an October release date maybe. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll find out from there, but I think it should be a good one. From there, I think I posted another community post that I was going to upload a Godzilla -1 video as well, and that will probably cap off the year, but if I have enough time, maybe we'll look into a Jujutsu Kaisen video. If not, maybe later on in the next year, so maybe or January, February of next year, depending on what it is time-wise. It's always hard making those manga videos because they take up so much time when you're editing those things, but nonetheless, expect those guys to be the next things to line up. I have a few different things I want to talk about and mention here in the next few months coming up, so I kind of have something planned for every single kind of portion and kind of have everything segmented into 2-3 month long kind of wait periods. I'm hoping I can kind of have some help with some other stuff here because I have had some help with some friends who's helped me with writing. I'm planning to get some more editing support here, so I think we should be able to see a little bit more stuff going on that isn't just kind of filler arc kind of stuff, you know, kind of feels more, you know, interesting. I don't know. That's the hope anyway. We'll find out. I don't know. This is a terrible update. This is not a great way to segment into the next portion of the channel, eh? What is important to say that is, I mean, the main reason I wanted to rebrand and bring this update to you guys is because I really want to put forward like the best foot that I can to making sure that this content comes out as great as I can and as interesting as I can, because I think there's been this portion of me that with some of these uploads just hasn't been very satisfied, and I know a lot of the time when I upload it'll be like, I think this is okay, and then it's met with a great reception, and I'm like, you know what, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And I'm kind of hoping that I can overcome that in some way, because I want to be able to feel like every video I put out is the best video I've made yet, and I think that's the only way I really should approach these kind of things. So, you know, I want to avoid the feeling of putting something out and feeling like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, which I have somewhat been feeling every once in a while when maybe I just want to push something out that's topical or something like that, because, you know, now is a time to do so. Now feels like as good of a time as any, and it doesn't work out quite as well. I'd rather take my time. Like, this video has taken the span of almost 2 years to make, and even then I still feel like it could be left on the, you know, in the oven a little bit longer to some degree, but I recognize at some point it's gonna become overcooked. So I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm going to put it out as is, and I'm going to be satisfied with it, as much as I can be anyway. As I mentioned in the video, this is probably the hardest thing I've had to talk about ever in terms of what my channel has done before, just because there's so much going on and so much I wanted to talk about. But I want to continue that sort of phasing and sort of continuation into the next following videos, because I think it'd be very fun and very, you know, just engaging to have that kind of thing going on. I think, you know, kind of half-assing a video is maybe not the best way to go about it. So if it takes some time, it takes some time. It is what it is, but I think it should be, you know, I think there should be a good quality upgrade coming up soon. And if you care to support, I already mentioned it before in the video, but Patreon, channel members, that'd be cool. Oh, here comes a shilling, baby. I'm just kidding. What I mean to say is thank you. I mentioned it already, but seriously, thank you. I really couldn't do this without you guys. I wouldn't be able to take the time I would need for these kinds of videos if I didn't have you guys and your support in the background, and I really appreciate everything you guys have done for me, all the support comments you leave, all the likes, all the shares, everything like that. It means the world to me, because I know that taking an hour or so of your time every time I upload is asking for a lot, but a lot of you guys stay and stick through with here anyway, and I really appreciate that, because it just means the world to me, and I will never fail to have an opportunity, or I will never not have a time to thank you when there's an opportunity to. So August update, probably going to keep on happening, because it seems like this is just always a time that I upload a very big, important video. So, thank you. And I hope to see you later on. We got some good stuff coming up. I think it's going to be exciting. That's all I got for you.